All right. So the theme for today is scaling success. So this is the banking session breakout that we're doing today, where we're going to focus on how our banking customers are unlocking growth with data and AI. And really, we're focused on kind of a few key use cases. And so I wanted to give a little bit of context. My role is field CTO at Databricks, so I've worked with hundreds of our financial services customers at Databricks and kind of followed them along through their journey of cloud adoption, architecture best practices, and helped a lot with kind of use case ideation and impact across our business. And we developed this outcome map framework at Databricks to work with our customers to articulate what business outcomes are in banking is everybody kind of targeting. And so you can see here, a lot of the focus for today is going to be hyper-personalization. It's going to be lead management, lead prioritization, loans and personal investment, and card and payments innovation. So that's the focus for today. We had other sessions where we focused largely on things like risk management, so credit decisioning, fraud, underwriting. And we've got a lot of sessions. We've got a session from a colleague, Antoine Ahmed, later today for insurance, so he's going to focus on some of these key aspects as well. But would love for you to scan the QR code and then kind of comment on what are your top use cases across the industry. So this is kind of the general lay of the land, if you will, for how we're thinking about impact. So the structure agenda for today, PicPay is going to come up and talk about the business outcomes that they've achieved using Databricks and their approach to hyper-personalization and specifically recommendation use cases. So across banking, we're really kind of early days in terms of things like cross-sell, being able to effectively merge data from different silos across the banks, right? Think about your kind of credit card divisions, your insurance divisions, your home lending divisions. This is an enormous challenge because of a lot of legacy tooling, data silos, et cetera. And so we've got a lot of great content. And we'll kind of have a panel here where we're going to discuss a lot of the key themes with HSBC, FIS Global, and EY Parthenon as well. So without further ado, Filippo Cabucci. Felipe was going to talk about the recommendation use cases for PicPay, which does massive transaction volume. And I can come on up.
Thank you, Ricardo. Well, so thank you, everyone. Let's present. I'm Felipe Cobucci. I'm responsible for data and AI on PicPay. And I will tell a little bit of how we are using our recommendation tool to improve our growth with data and AI. Just a quick introduction about PicPay. PicPay is one of the largest digital banks in Brazil. We have more than 60 million clients. And, well, we have a full digital bank services. We have credit card, we have payments, we have loans, we have digital wallet, investments, and so on. And this is a single intuitive platform. And also, looking for our big numbers, we have more than 1 billion reais of revenue in 2024, and also have more than 70 billion reais in total purchase value in 2024 also. And all those things, it's also with an AI, and we are using AI not only to growth, but to reinvent and to reshape how the customers deal with their money. Well, one of the most powerful ways that we are using to transform it is using our game-changing recommendation tool. And it's not about just personalization, but it's to create a different way and experience for each customer. We are creating a tailor-made situation that every client has a different looks in our app. So we have an experience that almost fits to like a glove for the client. So it's amazing for us. And we use a lot of customer insights in action to do that. So everything is based on what really matters for the client. So that's why we can construct a very unique experience for each one. And the result, it's simple, because we have over 39 million clients that use it daily. So we have an intuitive and empowering banking that these clients use. So one of the things that maybe it's thinking about, it's how do we just make that? And what have behind the scene? Well, we have a business strategy, and this business strategy, it's what we use as a tool to develop our strategy itself and to a foundation to all the models. And looking for that, and also looking for all the specific tools that we have and all components we have in the home app, we use on Databricks all the machine learning models to do a very strong recommendation moments. We have built more than 300 feature flags to use it, and every single component of the app, it's made with a different model using Databricks. And just to have an idea, last year we have more than 50 billion different recommendations during the entire year for all the clients. So it's amazing because it's a huge amount of recommendations, but we have a ultra low latency system. That's it's so important for us because it's so fast that for the client it just seems like it's a normal one. So they don't see the difference of showing these recommendations models. So it just works without any latency for him. So and thinking of all these recommendations and all of the things, one question normally appears in, well, but how does it look like? And basically, this is a snapshot of 3 customers looking for his home app, and how does it look like? If you look for the app itself, it's almost completely different from each other's. So it's even like the same app for them. And basically, we can see that the color palette is different from each other, the layout menu, the promotions, offers, the insight, all the suggestions that we put in the app, it's completely different one from the others. And this, it's very unique and it's very important for us because it's a real-time adaptability. The app changes, and the most amazing thing, it not changes only for the client, but also changes for how you use our app. Sorry, because we understand how you use it, when you use it, and which thing you do in our app, and you use that to create a pattern of use, and we use that for the personalization. And just to have an idea, we think about let's think about a scenario that a client that do usually a payment for his son, or he transfer money for his son every Monday morning, and then thinking of this specific pattern, we understand that, and if the client open the app, let's say on 8 a.m. on morning, we're gonna do a suggestion through that. So, remember, you normally do this kind of situation, and even and if they do this payment, or even they are opening another different time, we don't just disappear that. That's why we can connect the client for the real situation. So and we can do exactly the situation that he needs for the moment. That's why we think that's amazing, because it's not only based on the client as a general one, but the specific moment for the client. And well, this is astonishing for me, but what's the result about it? And thinking about the results about it, because in the end, the result, it's what really matters. Né? So this is one example of the routine that we have in our team, thinking about this process. So in this example, we have almost 6% of increasing of the click in our app using our models, and we have a conversion of a astonishing increase of almost 30%. And this is, it's not just a simple optimization. This is a transformation itself for how we do banking. And well, we are not satisfied. We don't do just one time, then we don't do it just once, and we do a lot of A/B tests, and because we think that every learn and every chance to learn more about the client, it's important, and every little improvement matters in this process. And thinking of the whole journey, we have almost 72% of our clients engaging with all the recommendation tools that we offer for them. And one thing that for me it's amazing, it's looking for the whole clicks on the app, almost 2/3 of the clicks in the app, it's exactly on the items that we recommend for them. So, well, it's amazing how we can understand the pattern of the client and recommend that for them. And one of the things, well, it's almost 80% of the CTR that we are increasing comparing with the situation that we don't have any model, and we have a conversion of the products almost 60% higher than if we don't have this model. So in the end, it's important because we can see that the client in the end is not just seeing in a better way our app, but it's converting, they're using it, they are having a better experience. So when we use intelligent with data, with this user experience in the same way, we can have a magic in these results. And well, this is what we have in the recommendation process. But we are not good with, we are not so, we don't think that is enough for us. So what's coming next for us? It's we are looking for a different level of recommendation that's not only recommend the home app for the client, but also recommend the whole thing for in the app. So we are taking the personalization to a next level in this process. Because we think that the client could have the experience in the whole ecosystem in a different way. And how we are doing that? Basically, we are combining all these models that we already have using Databricks with GenAI. And using GenAI and natural language, we are building a different level and where the client could not only use the app itself, but also can use other platforms to interact with us. So for us, it's important that the client feels use us in the place that he feels better. In Brazil, WhatsApp, it's a very relevant thing that almost 99% of the customers use daily WhatsApp. So we are transforming it and putting all our banking stuff, so all the investments, credit card, and all the solutions in WhatsApp in a natural language. So the client, of course, if he wants to use our app, they are there for them. But also, if you want to use WhatsApp or other tools, we are building that for the client. And because we think banking is not just about the screens and the app in itself. We think that when we are talking about banking, it's about the experience and the experience that adapts for the client. That's what we really think it's important in the end. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. So Felipe, thank you very much for the presentation. I wanted to ask just a couple of follow-up questions too, kind of based on what you talked about. So I think a really big challenge for a lot of the banks that we talk to is they want to be able to cross-sell effectively and basically pull together social media, pull together a lot of their behavioral data, maybe pull together external data, internal data. So what has your experience been on how you create this customer profile? What data do you use? How have you gotten so good at kind of doing this cross-sell for products as well?
Wow, interesting. Well, there are two things that are important for us thinking about cross-selling. The first thing is because we have all these recommendation process that changes what the clients see, we can improve a lot of the uses of different products. Because if we have just a standard tool, standard stuff that every client see the same thing, typically what the products that are not showing in the first shelf or the first scroll of the client, normally you can not sell as much as the other one. So it's important for us because when you do that, we experience a better offer for the client, and also we can create a better process to sell more those type of products. And another thing is when you use these, when we use in all the model and we use Databricks for all of those things, we use these insights, as I guess, or these things using whole ecosystem and the whole data that we have from the clients. Not only using the app, but all the transactional stuff, all the data that we have from bureau and all those kind of things. And because of that, we can understand better the situation of the client, even if they are not just say like they are looking for a loan, but I can see that they are needing that because of another type of data that I have, and I use that to put a better offer for him, and that's why we can improve it.
Perfect. So kind of using that dynamic personalization that you were talking about in the presentation, kind of keying on that for your which products to even look at, and then again, kind of looking at the behavioral data as well. The last question, I know we're almost out of time, so how have you, you talked a little bit about the agents, so how are you scaling that in terms of how do you protect against, you know, unwanted responses and just those kind of Gen AI considerations?
Oh, that's very important nowadays. Huh? Well, it's of course it's a difficult situation, but the main thing for us is because we want to offer all the things in different locations and also in natural language. And just because we have the dream, we already started it. All our customer support, our support for clients and those kind of things, we already have Gen AI within this solution. And we have something like 2 million clients that are attending per month using Gen AI. So we had this problem in the past, and we have solved that using all the APIs to do that, all the structure of agentics and all those kind of things. And because we have already constructed that, we think that building the next level is going to be easier. But yeah, I understand that it's a very complicated situation nowadays.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Felipe. Another round of applause.
No.
Okay, so now we'll kind of invite the panelists up to have the panel discussion. And we will start with Tony, who will be kind of closest to me on the panel. And Tony Kui is the Chief Information Officer with EY Parthenon. So they specialize in strategic advisory. There's a lot of different kind of corporate finance considerations and things we're going to learn about today. So Tony's here with us. Thank you for coming. Second panelist is going to be David Sabao. And David is our Global Head of Innovation Banking with HSBC. So David's going to be talking about a lot of, again, kind of trade finance aspects in banking as well. And then finally, Chris D'Agostino, so Chief Data and AI Officer with FIS Global. And then I think if everybody shifts one down also. Yeah.
Screwed that up already.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. So we're going to kind of start with a group question here. I think one of our customers that we've heard about at a lot of our keynotes and especially in a lot of our sessions is Block, formerly known as Square, right? You've probably seen things around customer onboarding, using generative AI for those use cases. And what's interesting about Block is they kind of started their business with Square, right? So the white credit card payments, so they were kind of point of sale software for payroll, inventory, bookings, all these different types of things with small merchants. And what's interesting about Block is it's a case study in disruption or self-disruption. So they disrupted themselves and ended up focusing on a new area, a new market with Cash App, which is now actually the biggest business that's under Block. And they found new markets. They kind of disrupted the Venmo and other competitors in their space. And so the question for the panel, we'll start with you, Tony, is kind of, how do you know when it's the right time to kind of disrupt yourself and change and versus, kind of staying put in the business?
No, it's a great question. So firstly, thank you to give this opportunity. I think for us, as you know, professional services is highly disrupted. and it's being a knowledge worker as well. So I think we're certainly living and breathing this as we see the expectation change from our clients and also ecosystem partners like yourself. So from our standpoint, we're looking at how do we actually leverage data. I mean, EY is a global organization with 400,000 employees, right? In terms of scale, we're in more than 200 plus countries. So what we're looking at is how do we actually bring speed to insights to our clients? I mean, through the banking sectors, through all of our sectors and everything else. So what we're looking to do is actually leveraging Databricks to curate specifically unique IP that we can actually give better insights and better decision making to our clients. On top of that, we're also leveraging agents to really automate, to drive better efficiency across our entire business, but also enter into new business. Especially what we're seeing is from the top end of the market, we work a lot with obviously the big banks, private equity houses, but we're actually going to slowly move down into, I would say, the middle market. I think that's going to be interesting in terms of new market and also new services.
Perfect. Thank you. And then, yeah, would love to hear your perspective on that, David.
Sure. Yeah, and I have the privilege of getting to work with a lot of the venture-backed companies, not just in the US, but globally. And so we see this question, kind of people grappling with it every day, and I think it's always better to do that from a position of strength. So let's use maybe Block as an example. Yes, they disrupted themselves, but they did that after having a pretty effective payment capability that took off and was a part of every single small business and entrepreneurial experience. And I feel like that gives you the credibility and really the opportunity to disrupt yourself. I think if you are moving into an adjacent market and you didn't nail your core, that's actually a pivot, disguised as a disruptive kind of expansion. For our experience, we've been at it now for 160 years. I think Felipe's presentation is a great reminder of how important it is to constantly be thinking about how do you disrupt yourself? How do you think about how the customer needs and the market's needs are expanding and changing at a radical pace? We started simply by creating trade flows between Europe and Asia. And we saw that really wasn't happening in a seamless way. And we said, well, maybe we should have a bank on the ground in Shanghai. And that was the big innovation 160 years ago. But from that, just following our customers, we ended up in 55 markets and territories all over the world with transactional banking on our online platform in like 170 currencies. And so following your customers and staying super close to how their needs are evolving, how their expectations are changing, I think is more important than ever. And I think PicPay is a good example of the direction of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point about it's the pivot where you built that kind of base, and then to your point, following the customers and figuring out what are the new needs that they're going to have as you follow them. So I think that's great. And then Chris, would love to hear I think FIS especially, right, they've undergone many different transformations and are undergoing one now as well. So if you could talk about your role there and disruption as well.
Sure, thanks for having me here. So as the Chief Data and AI Officer, FIS is interesting. I didn't know that much about them. I had been at Capital One previously, and we used some of their products, but I didn't quite understand the breadth of the solutions that FIS built and the reach that they had. So it's, to give some context, we're in over 100 countries. We've got about 56,000 employees. You have to forgive me, I lost hearing in my right ear, so it's hard to know if I'm speaking too loud or not. So forgive me if I am. Had a ruptured eardrum, so it'll heal up and I'll be better, but scuba diving, be careful. Okay, so we've got about 12 billion transactions per year that we process. That represents about I think it's like $13 trillion in assets that get moved around. And so FIS is kind of at the heart of a lot of the money movement that takes place, but they've got a broad range, or we've got a broad range of products in capital markets and banking solutions. And so the transformation here is really around two things. The first is, what can we do with data that we haven't been able to do in the past? And the fact that we've got so many deployments of the same type of product, but it's global in nature, and there's data sovereignty issues, there's contractual issues with the data sets, ways in which we can pull that data together, anonymize it. We're using Databricks as the platform to do that work and able to process, say, 1 billion records in less than 9 minutes. So It's been a really great partnership. The second piece is with sort of agents and agentic AI, what can we do to help assist some of our smaller customers that are regional banks, community banks that want to be able to provide services that are similar to the larger banks or capital markets customers, and be able to do that using agents instead of them needing to hire the people that the larger banks can afford to hire.
Yeah, I love that story, the last one you talked about, with kind of enabling new fintechs to kind of move faster and get access to a lot of the tooling that the large banks have today. So I think that's a key theme also, right? Like, there's probably a lot of banking customers who are mid-sized banks who are trying to figure out how do we accelerate what we're trying to do, right? So Tony, actually, I want to start with you and kind of talk about a little bit about the EY Parthenon specific product. So EY Parthenon, they specialize in strategic advisory, and I think there's lots of different angles, right? There's market entry, there's M&A transactions, due diligence, all these different components. So can you talk a little bit about basically the role that you're playing there, what products you're creating, and then also what is the origin story of those?
Yeah, so we, if you look at our services, we run from strategy to transactions, which involves financial diligence, operational diligence, and tech diligence. And then we actually go into execution, which is carving out companies, integrating companies, and lastly, transformation. So one of the key products we have is called the Edge, which essentially is an end-to-end platform that allows us to be able to do, and I think some of our panelists mentioned this already. We are aggregating data both from the web, procured data, and EY data, which allows us firstly to actually visualize any company following the money in terms of the ecosystem of that company, who they're investing with, who are their co-investors, and who their co-investors investing with. And we actually can it's a global database, which we've actually used AI to do our custom tagging. So we get asked all the time, hey, we want to enter into India, into women's health. Can you tell me which are the top companies, what is their financial performance? And we can do that relatively quickly with our actual Edge platform. As you move on from there, we also help us to accelerate diligence. The ability to use AI today, which you could not use before, is to be able to ingest in hundreds of documents and actually be able to, what we've done as a company is we've encoded our methodology into our prompts. So we have around 200 plus prompts just on financial diligence alone. So being able to actually run those prompts instantaneously once you have the data, you can actually produce a very early upfront draft report. And then flowing through to integration and carve-outs, we've actually created agents, which allows us, based on your context, based on the scope of the project, we can automatically create an integration plan or carve-out plan. So that's our end-to-end Edge platforms, and obviously that identifies value creation opportunities as well. But the key thing we're excited about, and I think actually Chris mentioned it as well in terms of data, we've actually created, leveraging Databricks as the core platform, what we call Data Bureau Service. That Data Bureau Service is our ability to actually, with the client consent, we actually anonymize the data, we create data products, and actually on top of that, actually aggregating web data and everything else to come up with new products and new insights for our clients. And if you actually, if you inject the actual data and insights into the agentic workflow, you get a magnifying effect in terms of not only optimizing the process, optimizing the actual delivery of execution, but more importantly, the insights which will help our clients to better make better decisions.
Excellent. And so since we're talking about scaling success, is there any kind of the secret sauce or special ingredients that you use to kind of scale what you're doing across the platform?
The biggest one is change management. What we have found is our platforms are global, so we are actually being used in 100 plus countries, and now we're actually pivoting to, with generative AI, it's so easy to do multilingual, so that helps us to actually get over some of the change management barriers as well. So our platforms can be in Japanese, in Korean, in Italian, and German. But I think it's the actual change management, because the pace of technology is moving so quickly, our users are not. I think that's the challenge that we have. The trust in actually the answer, the trust in the insights is actually one of the key things we heavily invest in.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. So kind of, David, I know we talked a little bit about some of the services that you're also creating as part of the innovation in banking, especially around trade finance, right? And there's a lot of kind of tariff, not only impacts, but basically a lot of corporations that need to pay suppliers and then have just-in-time transactions and support for that. So can you talk a little bit about trade pay? Again, that origin story, I think, which is really interesting, and then how you're scaling some of that work as well globally.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think your point that things are moving faster than they ever have is more true now than ever. We try to stay as close to some of the cutting-edge fintechs, enterprise software solutions, big data solutions that are out there as possible, both the big ones and the small ones, and we frequently invest in these companies. And so we've got roughly $1 billion of balance sheet capital invested across different companies from Series A all the way through. And a lot of that is just to be around the hoop, around the things that if they get successful would really disrupt our business, or frankly, we can see kind of evolving trends. One of those is this construct regarding trade pay. So when you think about global commerce, and we're one of the largest trade banks in the world, the ability for you to pay your suppliers tends to be a pretty laborious process sometimes, especially if you're working with a giant $3 trillion bank. It involves underwriting and lots of meetings with credit officers. And we saw the direction of travel was totally digital. And so we developed a solution in, I think, 2023 that essentially allows you to upload a single payment file. We pay that supplier on your behalf. We'll notify them that you paid them, and we instantly create a digital loan. And it happens in minutes as opposed to months, which was the legacy process. And we were able to operationalize that at scale. It took us no time at all to have billions of dollars of payments, really just going from like real-time payments to a real-time loan, which obviously is the direction of travel in terms of what expectations are. Fast forward to the fun volatility of 2025, and we had more and more customers coming to us and saying, gosh, now we've got all these interesting import duties, and that's changing our working capital cycle in a big way. And it became this kind of aha moment for us to say, why don't we, instead of just doing supply chain financing, this now just became an import duty financing capability. So we'll pay the import duty, we'll notify the customs group that that's been paid, and we'll instantly create that digital loan for you. And so it's an example almost of like, if you follow your customers, we happen to just have a tool that our customers essentially pulled us into an adjacent use case for that. I wish there wasn't this use case, but it's here and likely here for the foreseeable future. And so that's been a bright spot for us. And I think a sign that we have to continue to think about how do we remove the friction of banking, not rest on our laurels as brick and mortar and a $3 trillion institution, but recognize that speed and digital experience are more important than ever.
Perfect. And then maybe really quickly also, just in terms of some of those projects, when you think about generative AI, right, and using that as part of your products too, what have you learned as you scale some of these projects as well?
We came out pretty fast on the AI train. I would say we were really slow on the cloud adoption, and we said, okay, let's learn from that. Let's be really fast on AI. And we developed all of these POCs and projects and pilots, and we kind of tested it everywhere, but we actually didn't really make progress anywhere. And so it was a big lesson learned for us where it's like, okay, instead of us doing 600 different kind of pilots and experiments and, kind of user groups, let's actually pick some really core areas that we think we want to go deep in, where we just want to nail it. And so the kind of theme around those would be, think about high toil, low value work. And it turns out all of us experience a decent amount of high toil, low value work, and really leaning into that as kind of the use cases. And we're seeing that manifesting across the onboarding experience, aspects of our KYC obligations, certainly call centers and call remediation. We're using agents for that, which has been a huge positive. What we haven't done, though, is I'd say we're really focusing on where are we using AI to inform rather than decide. And the reason we're not really using it for the decide aspect of banking is just the regulatory scrutiny that comes with that. When you think about models, one thing bank regulators really like is the traceability, repeatability, and the predictability of a model. Right. And that's a little less clear with some of these evolving AI models. I think they'll get there, and I think we'll get that confidence. But at this point, we're using it to inform rather than decide.
fair enough. Yeah, I think that's pretty consistent across the industry as well. So, Chris, would also love to kind of hear your perspective. I think, again, you're involved with a lot of different product creation. There's a ton of different types of products. You mentioned cap markets products. There's also for banking, fraud, all these different things. So when we talk to a lot of our customers, data governance is a really big deal, and it tends to be more of kind of protecting the data. But I think at FIS Global, you're actually creating different products or ways to actually create fraud models and kind of enable other customers with what you're doing with your data and AI platform. So could you talk about how you're scaling your product creation, how you're thinking about it, and those solutions?
Yeah, sure. So we've got about 300 petabytes of data throughout FIS. And so we own our own data centers. We do some things in the cloud as well. And so one of the key objectives, and I met just about 6 weeks ago with FDIC, with the Federal Reserve Bank, and with Securities and Exchange Commission. So those regulators came in and wanted to understand sort of the new strategy that FIS is putting out there in terms of collecting data and processing it. And so, architecturally, we've had to make some decisions around, well, where do you push the AI models? Do you push them into the core products that FIS builds? The teams that I work with at FIS hear me say frequently we look at the SLA of the use case, right? We look at things that need to operate in sub-second response time, multi-second, multi-minute, and then you bin those use cases appropriately, and then you try to decide what does the architecture look like for doing the inference. For us, we see a huge opportunity because we see transactions from community banks, regional banks, large financial institutions. We've got a global view of consumer spend and like the type of payments and sort of spend that different consumers are creating. Someone in New York City versus someone in Arkansas, for example, in a rural area, the spending behavior is quite different. And so we've got the fortunate position of being able to see all of that. So one of the objectives is how do you collect that data? How do you protect it in a way that the regulators feel comfortable with? Again, back to the Databricks platform and using that to anonymize the data. But then we have a massive corpus of data to train fraud models. And so at our annual conference, Emerald, which just took place in May, our CEO presented the fact that we've just launched like a new fraud model, right, that will compete with some of the bigger ones, say from FICO, for example. So we're doing a bunch of things to try and innovate in that space by being in that pole position of seeing this financial data.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned the regulators, so just curious, how has that interaction been with the regulators, kind of educating them on what does AI regulation look like? How are these products getting released?
Yeah, so prior to FIS, I was at Databricks, and then prior to Databricks, I was at Capital One and was responsible for the data engineering platforms that stood up to include the warehousing and everything. And in 2019, there was a breach at Capital One where I think it was 100+ million records, personal records were stolen from a hacker, and was briefing the regulators. I wasn't involved in that incident, like I was the data platform behind. This was an edge system, but got a lot of experience working with the regulators. And what I found was they are very technically savvy. And so the recent meetings that I had, they were asking a lot of very detailed questions all the way down to like, what's the underlying Parquet, are you using Parquet files? Where is your observability for model training? When you run inference, how are you detecting model drift? Lots of very technical questions that I was a bit surprised by. Thankfully, we were prepared to answer those questions, but I think they're getting much more sophisticated in terms of their understanding of the technology.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. And a big thank you to all the panels. I think we heard a lot about kind of being data-driven, especially with the products that you're talking about, Chris. A lot around basically kind of model validation in terms of scaling out success, really focusing on the fundamentals there so that you can start to iterate quicker and have those guardrails in place, the predictability, right? Some of the guardrails that we actually typically implement with things like ML flow, right, and experimentation. And then Tony, it was great to hear about all these different edge platforms you've created as well and how to bring those into this data bureau service so that you can be more data-driven, with those different flows. So big thank you to the panel.